I hate you.
Hate away, sister. Hate away.
Moral Orel Season 2 is an entirely different show to Season 1. Whereas Season 1 had a lot of dark humor, and with only a few exceptions, it never really strayed into topics that got too dark. Season 2 throws that formula out the window, and you end up having dark episodes left and right. It can actually get pretty hard to watch poor Orel suffering while trying to listen to the adults of Morrilton, and seeing his own internal dilemmas while trying to listen to his father. It's actually something I can relate to. I tried to impress my dad when I was younger, but it never really led anywhere, and eventually, I just had to forgive and forget. So, it makes me glad to see Orel growing into his own person this season. I can relate to Orel, and I think it's actually kinda magical that claymation characters can invoke such feelings of understanding and sadness. I don't think many other shows have actually gripped me as much as Moral Orel has. So, I hope this review can kind of convey to you guys what this show means to me. And maybe, just maybe, it will help you guys understand a bit more about yourselves as well. Season 2 starts off with a hope spot before it decides to tear your heart out. Orel's parents don't end up going through with the divorce that we heard about in the Season 1 finale. They decide to stay together just for appearances. There's no more pretense of love between Blauberta and Clay. Only their Christian values keep them together. Orel's pretty happy about the fact they are staying together, and the rest of the episode proceeds as a normal Season 1 episode would. Orel learns that we're all made in God's image, which is a normal lesson to learn until he realizes there are people with skins of different color. So he starts getting the town to segregate the family of the boy with different skin, and it actually ends up benefiting the family. So the town ends up getting mad at Orel because they're suffering because of segregation. This leads into the lesson being changed from we're all made in God's image to
You see, somehow you've turned things topsy-turvy, young man. You've made it inconvenient for the racists, not the racers. And at that point, why even discriminate? Yeah!
Don't worry, even if the show gets a lot darker, it still has its comedic undertones. One of the biggest differences this season is just how many episodes where Orel isn't the main focus, and he takes a backseat to the residents of Morrilton. Episode 3 is the first example of this. We get to see exactly what Coach Stopframe would do for Clay's affection. Another episode involves Orel's friend Tommy getting put in the special ed classroom because he questions the teaching of the town. This is actually another hint just how corrupt Morrilton really is. One of the biggest reveals this season is actually in an episode where Orel isn't the main character. We find out Stephanie, a girl who works in a sex toy shop, is actually the daughter of Reverend Putty. This shocks him due to the fact that he's a virgin still. So it gets explained that Stephanie's mother stole some of Reverend Putty's wasted goods and used them to conceive Stephanie. This episode is pretty unique in the fact that it actually has a feel-good ending. While Reverend Putty doesn't believe Stephanie at first, he does listen to her when she explains what her mother did. This leads to Putty wanting to connect with his daughter, and the episode ends. There's no punchline, and there's no heartbreak. Just a nice ending where everything works out well for the two characters. Unfortunately, the next episode that deals with another character doesn't have that happy of an ending. We find out that Doey's parents are incredibly young, incredibly irresponsible teenagers. So Doey wants to find some affections from another source, and he does from his teacher, which causes her to take advantage of his hopes. She exploits him for as long as he's giving her nice things. So Doey uses a lot of the money that his parents give him to keep him out of their business to try and impress her to the point he pretty well goes broke. Then she gets bored of him. He's no longer giving her nice things, so why should she care about him anymore? This eventually leads into a dark comedic montage of Doughy taking advantage of Mr. Creepler, who's a pedophile that's interested in Doughy, so Doughy can get money to buy presents for the teacher he's interested. The episode ends with no one happy in the end. Except maybe the teacher. She kind of wins in the situation due to the fact she still has all the stuff Doughy gave to her. And at the end of the episode, for poor Doughy, the credits just roll. Even though there's a lot of episodes this season about other characters, that doesn't mean Orel gets the short end of the stick. This season has a lot of growth for the young boy. We actually get to see a lot of character development. He starts to grow from a naive boy who only listens to the adults in Morrilton to a young adult who actually starts to question things for himself. There are a couple slip-ups where he falls back into his old state of thought, but ultimately, by the season's end, he's a completely different character from the beginning of the series. If you guys are in a rush to complete the series for whatever reason, here's a list of important episodes for this season. So there's a turning point in this series where everything kind of goes downhill and everything gets a lot darker. That turning point is the Nature 2-parter, season finale. It's kind of a weird situation. This might be the best episode of the series, or the best episodes of the series, but the effects of the 2-parter ripple throughout the rest of the show, causing it to eventually be too dark, which leads to the show getting cancelled. So, what happens in Nature? Well, let's find out. Nature Part 1 is pretty unique due to the fact that it starts off with Orel getting his punishment instead of it being at the end of the episode. This leads to Orel getting a talk with Clay and Clay deciding it's time to take Orel on a hunting trip. Orel's pretty excited about the prospect of getting to go on a trip to bond with his father. However, in a scene before they set out, Clay wants Orel to get rid of a lot of his useless junk, such as his clothes, the first aid kit, stuff like that, you know, stuff you would never need for a camping trip, or a hunting trip anyways. In a rare moment of kindness from Clay though, he does let Orel take his lucky shirt, but this is more of a Chekhov's gun for later. Well, Clay does decide to take the important things, obviously, like the guns and the alcohol, cause you know what makes a hunting trip better? Alcohol and getting blackout drunk. Oh boy. They then head out to the forest, and while hunting, Orel does have issues shooting the animals due to his kind-hearted nature. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. So this causes Clay to actually get more and more angry every time Orel fails to shoot something. This eventually culminates in an angry breakdown where Clay, while he's drunk, is verbally abusing Orel. This ends up leading Orel to accidentally shooting towards Clay, and the episode ends on that cliffhanger.
Why do you quit working on me?
She always fools me, Orel.
I'll make things better, dear. Drink me. Put me inside you. I'm great. And she chokes me just like every other whore out there. They're all worthless, kid. Every woman. Don't let them get you. All of them want to get you. They just grab you and pull you into them. And then you're forced to stay in and pull out, stay in and pull out. And then they got you and they grip you right where it counts. And then they start squeezing things out. Things that are like weights around your head. You sit there for the rest of your life with nowhere to go and no one to be.
Dad! 'Cause, you know, I love you. 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 'Cause, you know, I
Nature Part 2 starts with a recap of Part 1, where we find out what Orel actually shot was Clay's alcohol, not Clay himself. This actually causes Clay to go into a furious rage. He then attempts to beat Orel with his belt. However, for the first time in the series, Clay is too drunk to get his belt off. Clay then falls over, and he starts to pathetically cry on the ground. He does eventually get back up and wants to proceed hunting with Orel. However, Orel, still in the right mind, obviously doesn't want to hunt with Clay, especially now that he's drunk. This leads to Clay accidentally shooting Orel in the leg. Clay then ends up ripping Orel's lucky shirt, and he uses it to stop the bleeding, which is a decent decision, honestly. This does upset Orel, but he then tells Clay that there is some disinfectant in the first aid kit. Clay then gets mad, saying he told Orel not to bring that. So, in perhaps the darkest thing he does in the series, Clay ends up drinking the disinfectant instead of applying it to Orel's leg.
Oops.
I hate you.
Hate away, sister. Hate away.
After downing the disinfectant, he then passes out drunk. While Clay is asleep, a bear shows up, and Orel ends up having to shoot it to protect them both. Then when Clay wakes up and sees the dead bear, he's initially proud of Orel, until Orel lies in an act of defiance and says Clay shot it. Clay doesn't question that and just accepts the credit. They then go to a doctor who won't ask any questions to fix Orel's leg. Unfortunately, due to the fact that they didn't disinfect the leg in time or get Orel into the doctor until the next day, Orel actually has a limp for the rest of his life. While at home resting in bed, Orel asks his mom why she married Clay, to which she responds,
Sexuals. But why did you marry Dad?
Oh, well. Why not?
Well, it's just that when he drinks, he changes.
Oh, he doesn't change, Orel. That's just his true nature coming out.
The episode then ends with Orel bedridden, and we get no closure. So, now that I have thoroughly traumatized myself by going through Season 2 once again, I can assuredly say this season is a big step up from Season 1. This show has really grown into its own entity that asks the questions that really make you think. Why are we here? Why did this happen to me? Why is my family like this? Every question this show can make you ask can resonate with a different person, and once again, I think that's a beautiful thing. Season 3 will definitely have me asking more questions, considering it's the darkest season of the show. But I also want to take a deeper look into nature, because this two-parter has a lot more to it than I could really talk about this episode, and I think it deserves its own analysis. Well, I hope this review of Season 2 lets you guys know why this show is pretty magical. And I hope it can change some of your guys' lives as well, because it has mine. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, why not click that like button? And if you aren't already, why not also subscribe to be notified when part 3 comes out? I really appreciated all the kind comments and new viewers from the last episode, so why not stick around and enjoy this YouTube journey with me? Because I know I'm going to enjoy it with you guys. Bye-bye.